want to spend a little bit of time talking about the election this year. This is What's Up Wednesday. I'm Terry, and we definitely want to tackle this topic and talk a little bit about what's on the ballot, why voting is important, talk a little bit about some statistics regarding people with disabilities, but election is next week. And so we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to answer any questions that were still lingering and let you know where to find additional information about how to vote, where to vote, if you're eligible to vote, things of that nature. So I've got just some brief information to walk you through. And then we have one of our local county clerks actually with us today, Ann Manary out of Midland County, has joined us graciously again. Thank you, Ann, and welcome.
Thank you.
I want to just share some basic information, as I said, and then Ann, I'll have you jump in and share concerns that you're hearing.
Sure.
And we do have an opportunity for people to submit questions after the fact. Just keep in mind that our timeline, voting is next Tuesday. So if you've got questions, let's send them in right away. So we do just, again, want to encourage folks to vote. Election, as I said, is November the 3rd, so please keep that in mind. The polls are open. And do you know what time is it, 7 to 8?
7 a.m. to 8 p.m., yes.
Yeah, okay. So we'll talk about where to vote and those kinds of things here in just a second. So I did want folks to know that there are a number of people with disabilities in our country. So about 1 in 5 individuals has a disability, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. However, there was a recent research project done by the Pew Research Center that asked people to report if they had any difficulty with a health condition or a disability that limited their ability to work, to go to school, to enjoy community activities, things like that. And more than 19% of individuals self-reported that they had some kind of a health limitation. Even if we just use that 19% of individuals or Americans with disabilities, that accounts for at least 17% of the electorate. So when we think about how votes are counted in the Electoral College, that's really a significant chunk. So to think that people with disabilities don't have influence on an election would be inaccurate. There's a lot of comparisons on, well, how often do people with disabilities vote compared to people without disabilities? And I think that's a really great question for us to think about, because there are barriers for people with disabilities to access the polls or even to complete an absentee ballot. So some people might not be able to access the polls due to a physical disability or perhaps a health condition where they might not want to be around a lot of people. There are accessible voting machines, and we can talk a little bit about those if you still have questions. I know we've highlighted them before. And those make it easier for people to see and to read the ballot. There's color contrast on there. You can have it read to you. There's a lot of really helpful tools to make that a little bit more accessible, but that doesn't work for everybody. Even the absentee ballot, we have heard a lot this year about absentee ballots and mail-in voting, but some people can't read or can't see that absentee ballot, particularly in this time of the pandemic where people are still self-isolating. They might not be able to have someone come to their home and help them fill that out. And so we're seeing some unusual and new barriers this year, but regardless, those kinds of barriers have existed. In 2014, we had more people without disabilities vote in the midterm election than people with disabilities, percentage-wise even. Same thing was true for 2016. Now in 2018 at the midterm, which we started to see the height of some of these political discussions, the percentage of people with disabilities who voted went up, actually 8.5 points, which is a huge jump. However, there was a similar jump for people without disabilities. So we had a lot more people vote in the midterm election in 2018. So if we do percentage by comparison, if people with disabilities had an opportunity to vote and did vote at the rate of people without disabilities, we would have an additional 2.35 million more votes on people with disabilities. And that's a pretty significant chunk. And as I said, could really swing an election. So sometimes people ask about how individuals voted. And in the past, we had seen more individuals with disabilities vote by mail. Several years ago, there were eligibility requirements about who could request an absentee ballot. That's been lifted so anybody could. And even before the pandemic influenced how we voted, a lot more people have chosen to vote by mail this time. Let's see, on the ballot this year, everybody knows we're having a big presidential election, so we'll vote for the president and the vice president. We have a United States Senator on our ballot this year in Michigan, as well as a representative in Congress. As usual, it's not uncommon that we have State Board of Elections and then Board of Regents and Trustees. You'll see that for some of our major universities. And then we also have a Supreme Court justice nomination. And so the Supreme Court in Michigan, anyway, it's an 8-year term. There are 7 to choose from on the ballot. You're going to vote for 2 Supreme Court justices, and one of them is already an incumbent. So they're currently serving. That's on the ballot. And so you want to make sure that you see that. And then the Court of Appeals also for our state is a 6-year term, and there are 2 incumbents on the ballot. You have an opportunity to vote for 3. So I always love that when you look and see, well, there's only 1 person to vote for. It doesn't make it very difficult. And so that's one of those that you don't have to vote for 3, but that option is available to you. We also have 2 proposals on the state ballot. The first one is, they're actually both of the proposals this year, on both of the statewide proposals, would create a constitutional amendment. And a lot of times that sets off a red flag for folks. So it's really important that you read those so that you know what kind of change it's going to make, because it would be a long-term change. Proposal 20-1 is an amendment to allow money from oil, gas, and mining on state-owned lands to continue to be collected in state funds for land protection and create maintenance of parks and nature areas and public recreation facilities. This language is actually on the ballot, so you don't have to remember that. I just wanted to overview that for you. It would allow state parks and the State Parks Endowment Fund to continue receiving money from the sales of oil and gas from state-owned lands to improve, maintain, and purchase land for state parks for fund administration until its balance reaches $800 million. And so it would continue to build over time. Proposal 20-2 is an amendment that requires a search warrant in order to access a person's electronic data or electronic communications. And so we know that there are lots of avenues for people to access technology now. And this amendment says that there's no legal basis for an unreasonable search or for people to access your electronic information just because they can. This website is one that is we recommend folks to access if you have any questions about your ballot, about your eligibility to vote, and really just gives a nice overview of what your status is if you're registered to vote, the place that you are supposed to vote. Every precinct has its own voting location, and so you'll want to know where that is. You can go on this website and find that. If you don't know, it'll ask for your your county, and if you're in a township or whatever, you can enter that information and find out where your polling site is. You can view a sample ballot. You can also go here if you've submitted your absentee ballot and find out the status of that. We've heard a lot in the media about slow mail, about worries about fraud, and if your absentee ballot has been received. If you submitted your absentee ballot already, you can go to this site and see if it indeed has been received. I'm going to pull up a sample ballot here while I, so this is that website that I just showed you, and you just go in and put in your location, that your demographic information. You can see on the left side here, there are lots of other details and resources where you can get information if you have additional questions. But this one happens to be the sample ballot for a precinct in Midland County. It's a nice long ballot, as you can see, but I'm going to walk you through it. And here up at the top, we've got the nominations for the President and Vice President of the United States. I'm going to go down that column on the left-hand side. So just below that, you can see that we've got the nominations for state senator. And it tells you right there in that green bar how many you can vote for. Okay, we're only going to vote for one senator. Our representatives in Congress, it's the same thing. We only choose one in that case. We also have an opportunity for a state representative in our area. Now, depending on what county you live in, your ballot might look a little bit different. This one, as I mentioned, is for a precinct in Midland County. We're all voting for the State Board of Education. You can vote for 2 individuals here. Regents at the University of Michigan, again, there's 2 here, okay? I'm gonna go back up to the top of that second column. State Board of Trustees for Michigan State University, we're gonna vote for 2. Wayne State University, also 2. And here's some of those unopposed nominations that we talked about. So we've got 1 for prosecuting attorney, he's running unopposed. Sheriff, same thing. County clerk and Manary, go and woot. Also running unopposed, our treasurer. And so again, if you don't fill this out, that's okay, but there's an opportunity here to just say, yes, we support your continuing in that role. There isn't anybody else running, so. We've got a drain commissioner, a county commissioner here also. And then we get to some of the broader ones. I mentioned that Supreme Court Justice, you can vote for 2 here. Court of Appeals, again, not more than 2. There's only 2 right here. And back up to the top of that 3rd column, here's that, here's your other one for District 4. And again, just the voting for 1. So they're all gonna probably sneak in there. Circuit Court, District Court. We've got Delta College Board of Trustees. And you can see, again, right at the top, vote for 1, vote for 1. We've got 1 for Saginaw County as well, running. We've got 2 individuals running there. And then the rest of these are specific to your particular, where you live, okay? So we've got lots of the areas have school district members running or different millages, okay? So in our area, we have a millage for Delta College renewal. In a couple of the counties, there are library renewals that are coming up. We have a few of our rural counties that have transit millages as well. And so you, particularly where the millages exist, you want to make sure you look and see if it's a renewal millage or a new one. If it's a renewal millage, that means your taxes aren't going to go up any more than they already are. If it's a new one, it will go, they probably will go up if it's passed. And the amount that it goes up is based on the property value that you own. And so it's usually a fairly small percentage. but you'll want to make sure that you note the difference if it's a renewal or if it's a new one. So I'm going to open the floor a little bit for additional questions, and I want to start by touching base with our county clerk, Ann Manary. Again, thank you for joining us. I know that with some of the ads and some of the things that we've been hearing about absentee ballots and in-person voting, that your office has gotten a lot of phone calls because there's confusion. There's people who are showing up to vote on and put their ballot in a tabulator, and that's not an option right now. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on and how we got so confused?
Well, I'm not exactly sure who started it, but I know that the Secretary of State's office started using the term early voting. Well, in Michigan, we don't have early voting in the sense that you can go to your polling location, vote your ballot, and put it into a machine and have it processed. We have absentee balloting in Michigan, and that's all we've ever had in the 30 plus years I've been here. And basically, that's you fill out your ballot. You can go to your local clerk, whether it's city or township, request an absentee ballot. A lot of your jurisdictions allow you to vote your ballot right there. Some of them actually even have booths set up for you to go in. You can vote your ballot, but then you must take it and put it in the envelope and seal it, and then hand it back to the clerk. The ballot itself does not get processed through the machines until election day. That's the way Michigan works. There are other states that do have early voting where you actually do show up at your polling location. You do actually vote just like you would vote in person on election day. But unfortunately, Michigan does not have that option. So if you're looking to get an absentee ballot, I highly recommend that you do if you don't want to go to the polls on election day, if you don't want to be around a group of people. Certainly that is an option for anyone. But make sure that you do it soon and that you go into your clerk's office, you request the absentee ballot, fill it out right there. Even if you go out to your vehicle or go and have a seat somewhere to fill it out before you leave and hand it back in. For those of you who've already received an absentee ballot and maybe you haven't returned it yet, please do not put it in the mail. Please take it and physically take it back to your clerk's office. Even if it's after hours, all the clerk's offices, I will say most all of them in the state, but all of them in Midland County have drop boxes located at their township office or at the city clerk's office where you can drop that ballot right in the drop box. Don't put it through the mail. We all know we've been having a lot of issues with the U.S. Postal Service. I received something from the Secretary of State's office in Lansing yesterday that was postmarked September 23rd. So, I don't know what's going on. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying we want to make sure that we have your ballot, that we receive it by 8 p.m. on the night of election, because that's the only way it will be counted, is if we receive it by that time. If we receive it after that time, it will not be processed. It will not be counted. So I'm just really encouraging people to please deliver it in person at this point.
Okay, I have a couple clarifying questions on this topic in particular. So if I know at one point we had an opportunity to fill out a form to request an absentee ballot be sent to us. If I didn't do that, can I still walk into my clerk's office today and request one?
Yes, you will have to fill out that form to request the absentee ballot, but it's simply checking a box, writing down your birth date, and signing your name. It's fairly simple form for you to fill out, and then once you do that, they will issue you that absentee ballot right then.
And then also to clarify, is that my county clerk, my city clerk, my township clerk?
So your county clerk, even though in my role as a county clerk, we only supervise, we're the chief election official for the county. So we only supervise the process. We don't issue absentee ballots. So you must, in fact, go to your local city or township clerk to request the absentee ballot. Yes.
Okay. And then last clarifying question on this point is, I already would have had to have registered to vote by the deadline, correct? So I can't go in and register to vote today and request an absentee ballot.
Actually, you can. Because of Proposal 18.3 that passed in 2018, there's same-day voter registration, which means you would be able to go into your local clerk's office, and you would need to provide them with documentation of your new address or of your address. So whether that be your driver's license that has your correct information on it, or a few pieces of mail that have the address on it, a consumer's bill, a charter bill, whatever the case may be. Take all that documentation to your clerk's office so that they know that you do in fact reside at that location, and you can actually register to vote all the way up until the day of the election. You can go to your clerk's office and register that day.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, because I've heard a lot of confusion about that deadline to register. And so thank you for sharing that. What are some other hot topics that you're getting, that you're either hearing, seeing on TV, or that your office is getting calls about?
Well, obviously the big one is the early voting. That has been the majority of the phone calls. People just upset because they can't, even though they've gotten an absentee ballot, they can't bring it in and put it through a machine. So we were having some issues with people who, because of the media, believe that they need to come in and vote in person. So they want to spoil their absentee ballot, and then they want to go to the polls on election day and cast their ballot. That's fine, but the issue that we're having, especially in the city of Midland, is that we ordered 100% of ballots, okay? So we ordered a ballot for every single person who is registered to vote in the city or in the townships. However, in the city, we have almost 50% of the individuals have requested an absentee ballot. So if we have a bunch of people come in and say, I don't want to use that absentee ballot, we actually have to void or spoil that ballot. And, so there's a little bit of a concern that if everyone were to do that, we obviously wouldn't have enough ballots for election day. So we're encouraging people that if you requested an absentee ballot, go ahead and fill it out. It's going to be processed. It's going to be counted. The things that you're hearing in the media is very unfortunate because it's simply not true. Those absentee ballots, they're just like going to the polls on election day. You just don't physically put the ballot through the machine yourself, but there are sworn election inspectors that is their job. They take an oath. They're not going to change your votes. They're not going to do any of those crazy things you're hearing on social media or in the media itself. It's just simply not going to happen. They're great people. They're just like you and I. They're not going to cause an issue. So I would just encourage you, if you received an absentee ballot, please just fill it out. Next time, if you want to go to the polls and vote in person, you're certainly more than welcome to. But we do have a concern, and it's not a huge concern, and we have got things in place that if we start running low on ballots, we have a backup plan. But we just encourage people that if you got the absentee ballot, just go ahead and please vote it.
So for you to spoil my ballot, what does that mean? What do you do with it?
So basically what happens is, so if you say you made a mistake on your ballot, and you knew that you made the error on the absentee, you could bring that into the clerk's office, and you could just tell them that you made an error, and they would literally, your ballot stays sealed in the envelope, it never gets opened, and they simply write spoiled on the front of that ballot, and then they go into the computer and they would issue you a new ballot. Or they would tell you that you could go to the polls on election day if that's what the reason why you were turning your ballot back in, is that you wanted to go to the polls on election day. So yes, either way, they would just put spoiled on it, and it just goes into an envelope to be basically he's put in an envelope that says spoiled ballots, and that's where it stays. And it gets sealed up with the rest of the ballots on election night, and again, it never gets opened. So.
Okay, so if I make a mistake on my ballot, I can get a new one, or let's say maybe I change my mind come election day. That would be another reason to spoil my ballot.
Yes, and if you decide, if you voted absentee, like I think Matt had said he turned his absentee in early October. So maybe Matt had a change of heart on one of the candidates and decided, you know, even though I voted for this candidate on this day, I've changed my mind. I want to vote for someone else. You can do that up until the Monday, 10 a.m. Monday before the election, because we have an absentee counting board that starts the pre-processing of absentee ballots. So you need to get a hold of the clerk's office as soon as possible and let them know that you want to spoil your ballot and you want a new one. So you have to make arrangements for that, because once we start the pre-processing, which will begin at 10 a.m. Monday morning, we will not be able to give you your ballot back to have you make your corrections.
Okay. So I know that we showed the site where you can check and see if your absentee ballot has been received. So it's, let's say that that website isn't up to date yet and I sent it in, or maybe I forgot that I sent in my absentee ballot and I didn't check that site, and I show up to vote at the polls. What happens then? Is there a potential that somebody could submit to?
Well, so we know as soon as the clerk's office receives your ballot, it is logged into the qualified voter file. That is the file that has every registered voter in the state of Michigan in it. If you have a driver's license or a personal ID and you did not specifically tell the Secretary of State's office that you did not want to be registered to vote, you're in that system, okay? So what happens is the clerk checks in your ballot. So every day they have one person or two people, or at the city they have three people. That's all they're doing all day long is checking in those ballots, okay? And it's real time. So if you're in Saginaw County, because we have a way to look up people statewide, okay? So the Saginaw County Clerk's Office can look up Matt Ivan and see where Matt is registered to vote in the city of Midland, and that Matt returned his absentee ballot on October 3rd. So if Matt were to try to go to Saginaw County and he would try to register to vote over there on election day, because as I said, you can do that, the system would know that Matt has already turned in his absentee ballot and he would be denied. The same thing here. If you voted an absentee ballot and then you went to the polls on election day, we would know that you've already returned your absentee ballot because it shows up in our computer and it tells us that Terry already submitted her absentee ballot and that will be processed. And so you would not be able to receive another ballot.
Okay. That's a good explanation. Thank you. One of the questions that we also got was someone who voted absentee, had submitted it already, and moved. And their question was, do I need to vote at the new location?
So if they already submitted their absentee ballot, they're fine. They don't need to do anything else because we've already received it. It's already been processed. It's already been marked as received. Obviously, the next election, then they will have to go ahead and vote at their new jurisdiction. But because it's already been sent out and received back, there's nothing they need to do. Their vote will count in the jurisdiction that they process their absentee.
I see that we've had a couple of other people join as well. So I'm going to open that the mic up, if you will, if folks have additional questions to go ahead and throw them in. I think we've covered quite a few potential areas, but if there are other things that came to mind for folks, this would be a great time to touch base with Ann.
Terry?
Hi, Tracy, go ahead.
Hi. So I am moving, but I have already voted for Michigan. I'm moving out of state. I need to register in that state to vote, don't I? Do I?
If you have already voted, you've already submitted your absentee ballot,
Yes.
you're just going to leave that as it is, and your votes will be counted here in Michigan. Once you move out of state, you will need to go to their Secretary of State's office there and update your information with them. But because you've already voted, you're done. I mean, you're not going to go to another state and try to vote.
I know. I was asking if I needed to register for the next election there. So yeah.
Yes. Once you get there, you will need to do that. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And then they will actually notify us here in Michigan that you have moved to another state and that you've received either a personal identification card or a new driver's license. They send us that data. So we will then remove you from the voter registration rolls here in Michigan.
Okay.
That brings up an interesting question, Anne, and I'm going back to the claims of voter fraud again. For folks that have dual residency, are you seeing people voting or trying to vote in 2 states?
Well, you can have dual residency in your I guess in your mind, but literally you can only have one permanent residence, and that's where you spend 6 months in 1 day. So you are not able to get a driver's license or a personal ID in more than 1 state. And that's the reason, is because you have to pick one. So you would not be able to be registered to vote in Michigan and have a Michigan driver's license and also have a Florida driver's license, because the DMVs talk to each other. So it's not possible. You have to, it's one or the other. People think you can, and I always tell them, you can try that, and I don't recommend it because it is a crime. It's a 93-day misdemeanor, which means you could go to jail for 93 days, and it's a $1,000 fine. So highly don't recommend.
Right. That brings up another thought again. I know that people have concerns about the confidentiality of their ballot, and again, somebody else potentially filling it out. If someone has, because if you registered early, the absentee ballot was mailed to your home. And so, number one, how do you know who actually filled that out? If my 6-year-old decided to do that for me, I know there are safeguards in place. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Absolutely. So if you requested an absentee ballot, you would have to fill out an application. So once that application gets back to the clerk's office, the very first thing they do is verify your signature, okay? And that signature comes directly off in your state ID or your driver's license, okay? So every 4 years, that gets updated when you get a new driver's license. So that's the first step. Once they verify that that is in fact your signature, and if they can't verify it, they will contact you, okay? But once they verify that that's your signature, then they will send you the ballot. At the time that you vote the ballot and you fill it all out and you put it back in the envelope and you seal it, you have to sign the outside of that envelope. And again, it's the same process. When it gets back to the clerk's office, the first thing they do is they pull up your qualified voter file and they look at your signature. If that signature does not match, they will contact you. If they cannot contact you, if there's no phone number or no way to contact you, that ballot will not be processed. Unfortunately, we've had some people who have requested absentee ballots for, typically it's parents whose kids are off at college and they want them to be able to vote. So they'll fill out an application for an absentee for their children. And so when we get that, obviously the signatures don't match, because no matter how hard I try, I can't sign my daughter's name. And so we contact them. And more times than not, because we always start with the kids first, we always contact them first and say, hey, did you fill out an application for an absentee? Most times they're like, no. So then we call the parent. The parent said, well, I wanted Timmy to be able to vote, and he was at school, and so I wanted him to be able to get a ballot. It's like, well, that's not how it works. You know, and people don't understand that that's also a crime. You can't do that. So, you know, my clerks are, and here in Midland, I mean, our clerks are really good. They catch them. I mean, they make sure that those signatures are verified. So,
one of the other things that we've been hearing a lot about in the last week or so are the poll workers and the people that are actually there at the election site to offer assistance. Can you talk about what their role is or what they can and cannot do?
Absolutely. So I know there was an issue a couple years ago with a couple of election workers who really didn't understand what their job was, or, you know, what the rules were, I guess. Not so much what their job was, but what the rules were. So basically, the election inspectors are there to do a job, okay? But they are also there to help the voter. And that can be anywhere from showing them a sample ballot, showing them how to mark on the ballot if there's some confusion, and literally taking the voter into the voting booth and assisting them. Now, if someone would like that type of assistance, there actually has to be 2 election inspectors. They have to be from different political parties, okay, that would actually go into the booth and assist the voter. The same thing with the voter assist terminal. If someone were needing some assistance with that, again, there would be 2 workers that would come over and help assist. One of the things that the confusion came in with the workers was a mom had went to the polls with her son and wanted to help her son vote in the booth. And the workers did not know that that was allowed. So that's part of my training now, obviously, when it was brought to my attention that anyone can go into the booth with the voter if you bring somebody with you, as long as it's not your employer, or it's not if you work for a union, it's not someone in your union. Okay, so a mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, whoever you want to take. I could take Matt in the booth with me if I wanted to. He could assist me in voting. So, you know, you can take anybody. So that's.
We do get questions sometimes about people wanting to bring their minor children in with them to show them the process. Is that okay too?
Absolutely. We welcome children in the polls because we want them to be good voters in the future. So absolutely.
I want to talk just a little bit about the accessible voting machines also. I know in several of our counties, they've done a really good job about getting those set up ahead of time. They should be turned on when the polls are ready to go. In Michigan, I believe we have 2 different types of machines now. Most of our coverage area has the same one.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about what it does and how people can use it? Do you have to have a disability to use it?
Absolutely. So they're called a voter assist terminal. Now, that doesn't mean that you necessarily need to have assistance to use it. Anyone can certainly use the voter assist terminal. And literally, it's a touch screen. If you want to use it as a touch screen, you can. There's also a pad that you can click to vote. You also, if you have a sip and puff, and you can also hook that into the machine, and it will allow you to vote that way. It will read the entire ballot to you if you have a vision impairment. Like you had said, there's different contrasts that you can set it on so that it will help you see the ballot better. So there's lots of different functionality within the system. One of the kind of nice things is after you get all done voting, it prints out a piece of paper, okay? Used to be the old machines printed out a ballot, everything that was on the ballot, and every vote that you made. And there was some issue with that, to being able to cast a secret ballot. But now these machines actually print out a barcode. And so it's like a Scantron code. So everything that you voted for is in that Scantron, and then you simply take it over to the tabulator and you put it through the tabulator, and the tabulator reads it. And so, you know, so instead of having to be concerned about someone seeing how you voted for a particular race, there's no identification on there as far as races go. It's all contained in that barcode. So I think that's a really nice thing that they added to it. And then all the tabulators read it. And so it just gets processed like a regular ballot.
Yeah, I think that was a really nice upgrade, because trying to get that ballot into the secrecy envelope for many people was
difficult.
Was very difficult. So
absolutely.
Or the tab at the top was different, and so it stood out. One of the things I really do like about the voter assist terminal is that it will tell you if you missed something.
Yes.
It kind of gives you that heads up about, hey, you forgot. And like I said, you can skip a vote if you want to.
That's
but
correct.
If you didn't intend to do that, it's a really nice safeguard.
Yes, it is. And you're right. I mean, you don't have to vote for every single candidate on the ballot, but it will tell you if you did miss something. So yes, it is very nice in that respect as well.
Other thoughts, comments, or questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, I had a question that had come up. In most elections in Michigan, we've had the opportunity to vote straight ticket.
Oh, yes.
And there was a discussion about straight ticketing being, you know, eliminated before and stuff, and I know that was kept on there as something as a right for everyone. But I believe there's a new option this election where you can vote straight ticket and also vote in like an individual race and stuff, and that would somehow. So somebody could clarify, you know, what that other option is.
I'm glad you brought that up, Matt. I was actually going to talk about straight party voting, because you are correct. That was part of the proposal 18.3 that got brought back as well as same-day voter registration. So at the very top of your ballot, you will have the ability to vote straight party. So whether that be straight Republican, straight Democrat, natural law, Green Party, any of those options are at the top of the ballot. And this is where people think that they spoil their ballot. So this is a really good point that you bring up. I can go in and I can vote straight Republican, okay, on my ballot. I fill in the little oval, and every single Republican candidate on the ballot gets my vote. But say I voted straight Republican, but there was somebody like Wayne State border regions, and I happened to know the person and they were a Democrat, and I really wanted to vote for them because I thought they would do a good job. I could literally mark that candidate's name and they would get my vote. Even though I voted straight party Republican, I can pick individual people in different parties, fill in the bubble next to their name, and they actually will get my vote. The only caution here is that you need to remember that then all of your nonpartisan offices, so all of your judges' offices, if you live in the city of Midland, your city council offices that are nonpartisan, you will have to vote them individually because they do not have a party attached to them. So therefore, if you selected straight Republican, straight Democrat, whatever the case may be, those folks wouldn't get votes unless you filled in the bubble next to their name. Also, your proposals, you need to make sure that you turn that ballot over. On the back of the ballot is where your proposals are going to be found, making sure that you vote those as well. So that was a great question, Matt. Thank you.
Are there opportunities to vote when you say that straight party ticket? Are all the parties listed on there?
All the parties that have been certified by the state. So it just depends on their certification level. So I know that there's Republican, Democrat, Natural Law, Green Party, and it seems like I'm forgetting one, but I can't remember what it is.
Like
U.S. taxpayers.
And Libertarian.
Oh, Libertarian too. Good job.
There's a couple. Okay, but
Yeah.
that's a good point, because if I decide to vote straight party green ticket, I'm really only voting for one race right now, because people aren't on the ballot in those parties. So,
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's
I
correct.
really do need to spend a little time reading.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons we encourage people to make a plan before you go to the poll, because if you show up and don't realize there's all these proposals and millages and Supreme Court justices to vote for, that can really feel overwhelming. And so
Yes, and here in Midland, the League of Women Voters actually they did a voter guide that is super helpful. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've been at polling locations where people have actually brought in the League of Women Voters sheet and used that to fill out their ballot, because it has all the information in it for all the races, all the proposals. So that's a really good tool. We have some located in the county clerk's office, at the county services building. I know the Midland Daily newspaper has a stack of them too. So it's a great resource.
Mm-hmm. And I think that they have a long history of being a nonpartisan resource as well.
Absolutely.
A lot of people like to see. I know some people do prefer to vote with a particular party, and they often have their own guides out as well.
That's true.
But this one is usually, has a long history of being touted as nonpartisan. So
yes,
great
absolutely.
resource. Okay, I think we have covered an awful lot of ground. And as always, I very much appreciate your perspective and your spending time with us. I think
Absolutely.
the information that you share is valuable for a whole lot of people. So we will call on you again.
Sounds great, Terry. Thank you.
Thanks so much.